The year is 1918, the 18th of January, and today we observe from a distance a funeral. It's a funeral that, while sad, is one that also brings us a great hope. How, you ask? Well, in order to answer that, we first have to talk about legacy and what we are remembered by and what we will leave behind for generations to come. This is the In History Show on the Semper Reformanda podcast. I'm your host, Cody Bachkamp. Today's date in history brings us to the country of Southern Rhodesia. Don't happen to recognize that name? Well, that's because now it is the country of Zimbabwe. But today in history, it wasn't yet known as this. It wouldn't be known as Zimbabwe, in fact, for another 62 years. So today, it is Southern Rhodesia. It is a country occupied and named by the British. The country was taken by the British, like others of its time and prior, through some deceptive political means in order to seize the land from the locals. But today is not a look into the political nature of the country, but rather of a single individual working to the spiritual end. This young female spent her life in the service of the Lord to make sure that those who had not heard the gospel would hear it. See, she was born in Dover, England, and she would eventually end up dying in Southern Rhodesia. But before we can get to her legacy and impact in her death, we have to cover a specific moment in her life that would change the trajectory of not just her, but the hearts and minds of many others. You see, this young woman became a Christian at the age of 9, and by the age of 21, she had moved across the pond to live in Cincinnati, Ohio. 4 years later, she would find love and eventually marry. The couple would later have a daughter of their own. And yet this happy family would soon know great pain. Because when this couple's daughter was 4, they took her to enjoy the sunshine along the Long Island Sound. While enjoying this day, however, they would hear screams in the water. A young boy was struggling in the water and began to drown. The husband, as brave as any, charged out into the water to save the young boy. This moment would not end in joy, however, because the husband would swim out to the boy, only to have the boy pull him under in the panic, killing them both. Watching her husband die trying to save someone obviously brings the question of why. Why, God, did this happen? Why me? Why now? It was out of this pain, out of this sorrow, that this young woman would pen the words of a hymn. As this young woman eventually coped and continued her life on mission for the Lord, she lived as a missionary in Africa. And yet this hymn carried with her. This hymn, birthed out of a pain and tragedy, became well known to the local African Christians that this young woman spent her time with and ministered to. So today, in history, the day that this young woman would die, it is said that the Christians in South Rhodesia would continue to sing her hymn in their own language. The title of the hymn, you ask? Well, considering the circumstances when it was birthed, this hymn is a beacon of hope in the darkness. The hymn that was written is "'Tis So Sweet to Trust in Jesus." The author was Louisa Sneed. And today, we reflect on her legacy as a missionary in the words of her hymn. "'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take him at his word, just to rest upon his promise, and to know, thus saith the Lord." This episode of the Semper Reformanda podcast was written and produced by me. Special thanks to Josh Koval for the music. Thanks. We'll see you next time.